Michael Hoffman is a New York native and former reporter for the New York Bureau of the Associated Press. He studied under Fayez Abu Jabir at the State University of New York at Oswego. He is the author of 9 books. His most recent is The Occult Renaissance Church of Rome. Today we discuss his book, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, published in April 2001, that focuses on the revelation of the method, or the doctrine of making manifest all that is hidden, the occult cryptocracy, Freemasonry, synchronicity, and advanced mind control. Michael Hoffman, welcome.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's good to be here.
I've just read your incredible book, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. In the chapter Episodic Revelation and the Lone Nut Syndrome is an excerpt from your book that I first read in another book that strongly resonated with me. You write, quote, "The following is a statement which comes from within the British intelligence wing of the cryptocracy. Quote, this demonstrates one of our simpler methods. Realizing that our activities will sooner or later come to light, we structure our activities so that as conspiracy researchers unravel them, they will release information into the public consciousness in such a way that it mirrors our initiatory procedure. In this way, the more we are investigated, the more masses of people are psychologically processed by the very people who seek to expose us. The meme that constitutes our essential structure is then successfully mimicked within the consciousness of those who investigate us. Success can then be measured precisely to the extent that our work is exposed." When I read that, I thought, yes, that's it. I had never read such a potent description of what is going on. We could certainly spend the hour discussing this one paragraph. Where did you come across this description of what you term the method?
The revelation of the method actually comes from my mentor, James Shelby Downard. I met him in St. Petersburg, Florida in the mid-1970s, and he was a very unusual man. He walked the razor edge between genius and eccentricity, but he had a mind where he was able to see and detect patterns. And also he had a historian's mind in terms of the research that he did. And he was the one that set me on this path of the revelation of the method. He also called it must be, or the making manifest of all that is hidden. And in the sense that in the very last days, not necessarily the last days of the planet or some eschatology like that, but in the last days of this grand conspiracy, which he centered and I center also in Great Britain as a initial starting point for it. And there are many other starting points, but that's perhaps the major one. What was set in motion in terms of what we saw with the first atomic bomb blast, the creation and destruction of primordial matter at the Trinity site on the 33rd degree of north parallel latitude in New Mexico, and then the assassination of Kennedy, the killing of the King right in 1963, close to the 33rd degree of north parallel latitude. And then Mr. Downard added to that the revelation of the method, that the way that the system would deal with this is by first suppressing it and then letting its own critics and investigators of the phenomenon be the ones who actually emblazoned and embellished their own invulnerability, as they're very much concerned about projecting a sense that they are virtuoso criminal masterminds, which indeed they are, but they're actually invested in having that set forth because it demoralizes people and it encourages a great deal of the apathy and abulia or lack of will that we're seeing in the people today.
On major trucking firms, and they've only installed this on some trucks, not all.
The Venus codes on cars too now, and the thing is, these little pellets in dogs' ears and so forth are being used pretty much all over now to identify dogs and track them from a distance. I have been told but have not confirmed that they're being offered to some poor mothers to put in their children as a way to supposedly help track their kid if their child is abducted.
Yes, and we've heard that. We've talked to some of these welfare mothers. We have been told by them that the offer was that it would be much easier, that the welfare system would go much easier for them, and that they would have less trouble if they would submit to this test program. And none of the people we've talked to will admit to having actually taken the chip.
So it's not a quantum leap in logic to assume that we do have the technology to implant a chip in a human being that can be scanned from a distance. It's also not a quantum leap in logic to assume the satellites that can read newspaper print, on a newspaper you're holding in your hand, could read chips implanted in human beings. It's also not a quantum leap in logic when you look at the bills that are presently pending in Congress that will require parents to get their children shot or face felony penalties, and which provide a mechanism to track the parents who don't get their children shot, and another bill that's pending that requires all Americans to get flu shots, to wonder how long is it going to be before we all get flu shot 666 with this little pellet in it.
Well, I hate to equate it with 666 because then you're getting into something that cannot be proved or disproved, but I can tell you this, through our investigation, that's exactly what is intended. The entire PET implant program was set up as the test vehicle in order to do this. We know that in 1989, Dan Rather said on the 6 o'clock news, I was watching it, we have videotapes of this, Dan Rather said that the PET implant program is so successful that some authorities are recommending that you have your children implanted to keep them from disappearing into the milk carton kids syndrome. So
calling it flu shot 666 for those who believe in biblical prophecy, whether you do or not, it's still a very scary thing to envision that we can all be tracked from a central computer with a chip in our hand or wherever they put it.
Mm-hmm.
And why would they want their method revealed?
Because if we have a sense, and I think we do have a sense, that these are supremely powerful people against whom resistance is useless, then that extends their power exponentially. And also, I believe that it takes people into what my book mentions is the Videodrome, and there was a film of that name, again in the 1970s, a very important decade in the history of America, in my opinion. And so there you have where people are looking for the next thrill. There's what's come out of conspiracy theory is not entirely healthful. And it's the idea that it's almost morbidly sick, some aspects of conspiracy theory, in that they've processed less from investigators seeking prosecutions and bringing criminal perpetrators to justice than emblazoning the power of this technology, this occult technology, and the people who are behind it, and sitting in awe. And of course, the inducing awe in people is to induce paralysis in them and a type of shock. And so we've become addicted to the thrills of finding out what our slave masters are doing to us. And rather than engaging us in a counter reaction, such as would have happened in a different era, by the way, which is important to note, the making manifest of hidden, the revelation of the method, couldn't have been done in the early 20th century, much less in years before that. The people were so healthy that their reaction would have been a type of pitchfork peasant revolt. It had to wait for the time when we've been so heavily indoctrinated by this entire system that we sit back and see it as part of this videodrome of a plethora of fast-moving images, thrills. And so we become less human in the course of that, and we're relegated almost to the status of Frankenstein's monster, where the only way we can feel alive is by getting more shocks to our system, and these shocks translate into these various forms of occult psychodrama, whether it's the Las Vegas shootings or some of these other ritual murders. And it becomes a morbid type of a thing where instead of acting against this evil, we're actually participating in it in a type of awe which has frozen our capacity to act.